When the kidnappers forced Jake to choose between me and his childhood sweetheart, he chose me. But I didn't go with him, because in my previous life, I knew he would regret it. And that's exactly what happened. The kidnappers humiliated Amy, his childhood sweetheart. They took degrading photos of her, and that same night she went home and slit her wrists. Jake pretended not to care and went through with our wedding as planned. But afterward, he made my life miserable. I realized he only married me to punish me, to trap me in guilt over Amy's death. So this time around, I refused to repeat the same mistake. "Sophie, come with me," Jake begged. When I woke in this life, the kidnapper was holding a knife to both my throat and Amy's, demanding Jake choose. His eyes flickered between us. After an agonizing pause, he made the same choice as before. He reached out his hand to me. But I shook my head firmly. "Jake, save Amy first." This time, I didn't want to owe anyone a human life. Relief flickered across his face. "Sophie, you're my fiancée. I should save you first. But since you insist, don't blame me." He grabbed Amy and fled as quickly as possible, terrified I might change my mind. But unlike him, I wasn't someone who made choices only to regret them later. In my previous life, when the ransom money was raised at the last moment, Jake was forced to choose me. During that time, the kidnappers photographed Amy and nearly assaulted her before we arrived with the police. Though the worst didn't happen, the damage to her dignity was irreparable. Amy returned home broken and ended her own life that very night. Jake showed no grief. He calmly arranged her funeral, gave her family a large sum of money, and refused even to postpone our wedding. "Sophie, marrying you was already planned. We can't let outsiders affect that." But Amy was no outsider to him. He mourned her for 7 years, even as he tormented me daily. This time, I would not let myself be trapped again. As I was left behind with the kidnappers, I started planning my escape. I remembered that in my past life, when they tried to hide near an auto repair shop, the tough mechanics there had fought back viciously. Even the kidnappers hadn't expected that resistance and were forced to retreat. Now, once again, they stopped near the same shop. When the driver wasn't paying attention, I bit open the inside door handle, shoved it down, and bolted. My only chance was to reach that repair shop. The place was already chaotic. Men were shouting, tools clanged, and I immediately spotted the young owner, sharp features, steady eyes, and a calm integrity that radiated strength. I sprinted toward him, but in my panic, I collided with him and we both fell to the floor. "I'm sorry," I stammered, pale with fear. "Please, save me." His brows furrowed, but in the next instant he pulled me into his arms and rolled us aside. A chair crashed down exactly where we had been lying. If not for him, I'd have been seriously hurt. The kidnappers noticed I'd escaped, and the standoff inside the shop escalated. Trembling, I whispered, "I'll do anything if you save me." He didn't answer. He simply stared coldly at the kidnappers. One of his men muttered, "Ryan, better not get involved." So his name was Ryan? When the kidnapper boss called me over for the 3rd time, I started to move. But a firm hand landed on my shoulder. "She's under my protection today," Ryan declared. Just then, the roar of motorcycles echoed outside. Ryan's lips curved into a confident smile. "My backup has arrived." The kidnappers cursed under their breath and left, glaring at me with resentment. My heart pounded as Ryan cut the ropes on my wrists. "I'm Sophie." "Thank you," I whispered, extending my hand. He didn't shake it. His eyes stayed fixed on the raw rope marks on my skin. "Let me treat that." I shook my head. "It's nothing." "Didn't you just say you'd do anything if I asked?" He countered calmly. Without waiting for my reply, he sat me down and pulled out a first aid kit. "This might hurt a little," he warned. I bit my lip as he carefully bandaged me. No one had ever cared for me like this before. A strange warmth spread through my chest. "Where do you live?" "I'll take you home," Ryan said afterward. But I didn't want to go home. My parents were always too busy to care about me, and Jake. I suspected he had been reborn too, only this time eager to live happily with Amy. In this life, I wanted no part of him. So I looked up at Ryan and pleaded, "Could I stay with you for a few days?" He leaned closer, his gaze intense. "Careful, young lady. If you keep asking me that way, I might take you seriously. His fresh scent made my throat tighten. I swallowed nervously, about to reply, when a familiar voice cut through the air behind us. "What are you two doing?" The familiar voice slid down my spine like ice water. I turned, heartbeat snagging on my ribs. Jake stood at the edge of the bay under the buzzing lights, a crisp shirt rolled at the sleeves, hair windswept as if he had run all the way here. The mechanics went still one by one, as if someone had pressed pause on the scene. Ryan straightened beside me, his hand leaving my shoulder with slow reluctance. Jake took in the ropes on the floor, the scattered tools, the bruised marks around my wrists, and then Ryan, who did not look away. His gaze cut back to me. He did not say my name. He did not ask if I was hurt. He asked the only question a man asks when he believes he owns the answer. "Why are you with him?" My throat worked. The previous life lay between us like broken glass, and every word I could say would slice open old wounds. I was not going to bleed for him again. "He saved me," I said. "Your choice made that necessary." The tendons in Jake's jaw flexed. He took 2 steps toward me, then stopped when Ryan shifted. The room rustled. Wrenches clicked against metal. A compressor thumped twice and settled. "Thank you," Jake said to Ryan, voice smooth the way a blade is smooth. "I will take her now." Ryan did not move. He had not moved when a chair crashed down on us. He had not moved when a ring of men with bad tempers and worse intentions glared at him. He did not move now. "She is not a parcel to be picked up," he said. "She is under my protection while she is on my floor. And as far as I can tell, she does not want to leave with you." Jake laughed once, a short sound that said he did not find any of this funny. He looked at me again. "Sophie. We have a car outside. The police are on their way. This place has done enough damage." The police. In my previous life, he had walked into a station the next morning and signed an affidavit that described every risk he had taken, every sacrifice he had made, every detail that made him look like a hero. No line in that statement had room for shame. I stepped closer to Ryan anyway. "I will give my statement here," I said. "Then I will decide where I go." For a moment, something like disbelief cracked across Jake's face. He turned it into anger so fast it looked like sleight of hand. "You would trust a stranger over me?" "Stranger is a word for someone who has never held a knife to your future," I said. "Right now he is the closest thing I have to safe." Ryan did not look at me, but his stance thickened like a shield. Jake took in that shift and unrolled his cuffs as if he were preparing for a fight. It would have been almost comical if not for the way my stomach climbed into my throat. A siren yelped outside. Headlights smeared pale across the windows. 2 officers entered with deliberate calm and professional suspicion. A woman with a clipboard followed. Statements were taken. Names recorded. The kidnappers were gone, but security cameras in the alley had caught part of the standoff, and Ryan's crew spoke with the loyalty of men who did not like bullies near their work. When it was my turn, I told the truth. Not the reincarnation, because there is no line on any form for that kind of confession. Just the details that mattered. The knife. The choice. The escape. The chair that should have ended me and the man who moved me before it fell. My voice stayed steady until I described Amy. Then it wavered like heat over asphalt. The woman with the clipboard softened. The officers exchanged a look that might have been pity. Jake closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were dry. "We will put a patrol car on your street tonight," one officer said. "Do you have a place to stay?" "Home," Jake answered before I could. "With me." "I'm not going home with you," I said. Silence swallowed the shop again. Ryan's thumbs tapped against the edge of the first aid box, a slow patient beat. The officer looked from me to Jake to Ryan and back again. "Do you have somewhere else you feel safe?" he asked. Ryan spoke before I did. "She can stay in the office tonight. It locks from the inside, and I will have 2 men on the door. In the morning she can decide." It was not a hotel suite or a guarded mansion. It was more than enough. The officer nodded. Jake did not. "You are my fiancé," he said, each word clipped. "We announce our date this week. The families are expecting news. People are watching." That was the problem, was it not? The audience had always been his first concern. He wanted to look noble in a story where I kept bleeding on cue. "I am not a headline," I said. "Not for you. Not anymore." His mouth tightened. He signed some form, snapped his pen closed, and left with a nod that was not really a goodbye. The officers followed. The woman with the clipboard gave me a tired smile and told me to rest. The bay lights hummed. The men drifted back to their work. The noise of their tasks stitched my nerves into something like a blanket. Ryan gathered the used gauze and tossed it away. "You can have the office," he said, as if we were discussing a loaner car, not the next step in a life I had just stolen back. "There is a sofa. It is not soft, but it is clean. If you are hungry, there is a diner around the corner that does not ask questions and overfills every plate." "I should call my parents," I said, knowing they would let it ring out and call back when it suited them. "I should call someone. Anyone." "Call yourself first," he said. "Make sure the voice you hear still sounds like you." He walked me to a narrow room with a desk and two mismatched chairs. A small couch sat against the far wall, draped with a folded gray blanket. The door was metal. The lock was sturdy. On the desk sat a half-finished carburetor, the kind of mechanical heart you could fix with patience and the right tools. If only people were that honest. "Thank you," I said. The words felt small. I wanted something larger to press into his hands. He had risked his shop for me, his men, possibly his livelihood if the kidnappers had decided to come back with numbers and rage. I had nothing except a name that suddenly felt like debt. Sophie. I almost hated the sound of it because it was the name Jake used when he picked me out of a crowd and pretended it meant devotion. Ryan leaned his shoulder against the door frame. "You are welcome," he said. "My guys will rotate. If you need anything, knock twice, pause, then knock once. Anyone else who knocks gets ignored unless they know that rhythm." He waited. I repeated it back. "Good. Get some sleep." I did not sleep. I lay on the couch and stared at the ceiling where a hairline crack traced a lazy river from the light fixture to the corner. Every time my eyes slid closed, the chair fell again. Every time I forced them open, Jake's face stood beside the memory of a coffin and white lilies that smelled like grief. At 3 a.m, the hallway steps creaked. The door did not knock. The rhythm did not come. I sat up, heart sprinting. The knob turned once and stopped against the lock with a dull clack. "Sophie," Jake called softly. "I know you are awake." I stared at the door as if I could make it unhear him. He tried the knob again, then lowered his voice further. "I did not abandon you," he said. "I followed the kidnappers. I slipped a tracker into Amy's pocket. I tried to save both of you. You must remember that. Do not rewrite what happened because fear is louder than facts." In my previous life, those words had been my lullaby. I had sung them to myself every night and called the tune loyalty. In this life, I heard only the parts he had never said out loud. I tried to save both of you. But I chose the one the world would praise. I chose the one whose loss I could mourn without shame. I did not answer. He stood there for a long time. Then his footsteps retreated. Dawn came pale through the high window. Coffee appeared thanks to a quiet knock in the right rhythm. Ryan himself carried a paper cup that burned my palm in a good way. He set a brown bag on the desk. 3 eggs. Toast. Enough bacon to fix almost anything, he said. There is no medicine in the world with that success rate. I ate like I was rebuilding a map out of crumbs. When I finished, he unscrewed the cap from a bottle of water and handed it over. The simple care of that gesture made my eyes sting. I turned away and drank until my throat remembered it belonged to me. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now I go home," I said. Not to Jake's place. To my parents' house to collect the last pieces of myself. Then I find an apartment. Then a job, because if I am going to keep choosing, I need my own money to back those choices. Then I call the officer and ask for the case number. Then, maybe, I sleep for more than a handful of minutes. "That is a lot of things for someone who did not sleep," he said. "I can drive you." "You hardly know me," I said. "I know enough," he said. "I know you ran toward help when you could have hidden under a seat and hoped the world would fix itself. I know you chose another woman's life over your own pride. And I know you are tired of being a chapter in someone else's version of events. Heat spread under my skin in a way that had nothing to do with coffee. You talk like you read me, I said. I work with broken engines all day, he said. I can hear where a machine knocks even under the music. People are not so different. He drove me in a truck that smelled faintly of oil and sun-baked leather. The roads were clear this early. The city still yawned. We passed a florist opening her metal gate, a boy dragging a backpack as if it were a bad memory. I watched the world and tried to feel like I belonged to it. My parents' house looked like a magazine photo, the kind where nothing with feelings is allowed to stay in frame. The lawn edges were barbered. The porch pots were symmetrical. Behind the left window, my mother kept a cabinet of porcelain birds she never dusted herself. You want me to come in? Ryan asked. No, I said. But do not go far. He parked under the jacaranda at the curb. I walked up the path with my shoulders squared and my stomach tight. The door opened before I reached it. My mother stood there in a robe that cost more than some people's cars. Her mouth was a line. Her eyes took in my wrinkled clothes, the bag under my arm, the strip of bruise peeking from my sleeve. Finally, she said. Do you know how many times your future mother-in-law called me last night? Do you know how many questions I fielded so you could have the luxury of whatever this is? I stopped on the threshold. Good morning to you too, I said. I am here to collect my things. Then I'm moving out. She laughed, a brittle tinkling sound. Do not be ridiculous. Jake has already handled the unpleasantness. The wedding goes on schedule. You will not embarrass this family. Embarrass. The word bounced inside my ribs like a loose part. I pictured Amy lying on white tiles, her wrists silent. I pictured my own face in the mirror last life, learning how to smile at appointments where love was a bullet point. I am not your schedule, I said. I am not a line item. If I embarrassed anyone by staying quiet while other people bled, that is over. Her eyes sharpened. Your father, she said, and stepped back. He was at the dining table with the paper unfolded like a shield. He did not lift his eyes until my shadow touched the floor near his coffee cup. We should be practical, he said by way of greeting. Jake has resources. The network is valuable. You are not positioned to throw that away. I am positioned to throw myself away if I stay, I said. That is not a bargain I will sign again. Again, he repeated, as if that word had slipped out of a drawer I was not supposed to open. He folded the paper with surgical precision. There is a small apartment above the old office on 6th. Empty since the tenant left. I will have someone change the locks. You will owe me the rent. You will not ask me for favors after that. I stared at him. In the previous life, he had said something similar, but the apartment had been a leash tied to an account he controlled. I looked for the loop in the rope now. My mother hissed. You will reward her tantrum. He set the paper down. I will reward her decision to be a person, he said, and for a long second he looked like the man who had taught me to ride a bike on a narrow street and cheered even when I tipped over. It passed. He picked up his cup. Be out in an hour. I went upstairs, hands shaking. I packed with the speed of someone rescuing a life from a fire. Clothes. A few books. The old sketch I kept folded in a shoebox because no one had ever praised it but me. The photograph of Amy and me from a school charity fair, 2 girls holding paper cups and making faces at the camera. I slid it into my bag like a promise. On my way down, voices rose and fell behind the kitchen door. My name. Jake's name. The word optics. I kept walking. Outside, the jacaranda had dusted the curb with purple. Ryan leaned against the truck and straightened when he saw the bag in my hand. Good, he said simply, as if any other outcome would have been unacceptable. He took the bag without asking and set it behind the seat. Then he opened the passenger door like I was a lady in a story where the men wore clean boots and meant what they said. At the corner light, my phone rang. The screen showed Jake. I let it ring. It rang again. I powered it down. My silence filled the cab until it felt like a new language I might learn to speak. We drove to 6th. The apartment was small and square and full of the kind of light that tells the truth. The locksmith came and swapped out the deadbolt while Ryan and I stood in the hall and pretended not to listen to the metal story of a door learning a new name. You should shower, Ryan said when we stepped inside. Not because you look bad. Because sometimes you have to rinse the night off before the day sticks. I smiled at that. The bathroom mirror was kinder than I expected. Afterward, I folded my old life into a clean pile on the bed and sat beside it. Ryan stood in the doorway as if he did not trust the floor to hold us both. There is something I did not say last night, I told him. You will decide I'm crazy. I might be. But it is still true. He waited. I remember another version of this, I said. Not this room or this paint, but the shape of the choice. I lived it already. I survived it. And I forgot what it felt like to choose myself. I am not forgetting again. His eyes searched my face the way a mechanic listens for a faint misfire. He did not look away. Then do not, he said. You do not owe me an explanation for how you know which roads have potholes. You only owe yourself the promise that you will not drive with your eyes shut. The door buzzer rasped. We both startled. Ryan stepped back, and I followed to the intercom. Who is it? He asked, voice crisp. A pause. Then a man said, delivery for Sophie. I frowned. I had not ordered anything. The buzzer rasped again, longer this time, impatient. Ryan pressed the talk button. Who sent it? Another pause. Then a smile slid into the voice like grease. A friend. Open up and see. Ryan did not. He turned to me, all that easy confidence coiling into something ready. Stay here, he said. Do not open the door. Not for anyone. If it is nothing, I will look silly for a minute. I can live with that. He went down the stairs with quiet steps. I stood with my hands pressed flat to my thighs. The building sighed. Somewhere a radio hummed. On the landing below, a low male voice murmured, then another. The tone changed. The air went tight. My phone, dark on the bed, pulsed back to life on its own as if it had decided my rules did not apply. A text swam into the lock screen before I could stop it. No name. Just a number and a message that punched through the morning. You were supposed to be alone. I stared at the words until they blurred. On the hall side of my door, feet shuffled. A thud. Ryan's voice, sharp now. Sophie, he called, not loud but urgent. Listen to me. Step back from the door. Call the officer. Say we have a code 3. Then get to the window and be ready to move. I did not know what a code 3 was. I did not have to. The truth can fit through any keyhole if you make it small enough. My hands were steady as I dialed. My voice was clear when the dispatcher answered. I gave the address and the name of the officer who had promised a number. In the hall, something struck wood hard enough to ring. The door jumped in its frame. A breath of air slipped through the seam and found my face. The text on my phone brightened again, a second message that tasted like copper. Open up, it read, or we will open it for you. I took one step back. Then another. Then I reached for the window latch, drew it up, and felt daylight spill against my palms like a choice I had finally learned how to make. The window groaned as I forced it open. Morning light streamed in, sharp and pale, slicing across the floor. My heart hammered as shouts erupted in the hallway. A fist pounded the door hard enough to rattle the hinges. I could hear Ryan's voice, low and firm, countering with words I could not make out. Another thud shook the frame. Sophie, move, Ryan called, his voice tense but controlled. I swung one leg over the sill, gripping the rough ledge outside. The apartment sat 2 stories up. Below, the narrow alley was cluttered with garbage cans, a rusted ladder, and an abandoned bicycle. It was not far enough to kill me if I jumped, but far enough to break bones. I hesitated. The door banged again, this time with the metallic shriek of a crowbar biting wood. Splinters scattered. I looked down once more. My choices were simple: fall or be dragged back into a nightmare. I climbed fully onto the ledge, just as the door gave a tortured crack. A hand grabbed my wrist from inside, not rough, not hostile. Ryan. His eyes locked on mine. Not yet. Backup is almost here. Trust me. The faith in his tone steadied me. He pulled me back in just as the door burst inward. 2 masked men lunged forward, crowbars raised. Ryan moved like a storm, kicking the door hard enough that it rebounded into them. One staggered and Ryan's fist found his jaw with brutal precision. The second swung wildly. Ryan ducked, seized the man's arm, and twisted until the crowbar clanged to the floor. The man howled. Before I could process it, Ryan shoved him against the wall and barked, "You picked the wrong house." Another shadow filled the doorway. My lungs clenched. But instead of another attacker, it was a police officer, gun drawn, badge flashing under the hall light. Behind him came two more. Sirens wailed outside as squad cars sealed the street. The two masked men froze, caught between fight and surrender. In seconds, they were forced to the ground, wrists bound in cold steel. The hall filled with shouts, radios crackling, orders flying. Relief crashed over me so suddenly my knees weakened. Ryan steadied me with one hand on my shoulder. His breathing was even, though sweat dampened his temples. "You are safe now," he said simply. Safe. The word felt fragile, like glass in my hands. The officers confirmed my statement, taking down details while evidence bags swallowed the crowbars. One officer explained that the men were connected to the same gang of kidnappers from before. They had tried to reclaim me, hoping to silence a witness. Their mistake was underestimating the reach of the case now in motion, and underestimating Ryan. Hours later, after the adrenaline drained from my veins, I sat on the sofa in the apartment with a blanket around my shoulders. Ryan brought me a mug of hot tea, steam curling into the air. "You should rest," he said. But rest felt impossible. My mind spun. Jake's face flashed before me, his hesitation, his denial, his attempts to twist the past. The memory of Amy hovered close, her laugh, her kindness, her tragic end in my previous life. I broke the silence. Jake will not stop. Even if he failed today, he will find another way to pull me back. To him, I am not a person. I am a symbol, a possession, an obligation he uses to polish his image. Ryan studied me for a long moment. "Then cut the rope yourself. Do not wait for him to let go. You do not belong to him, Sophie." His words pierced something inside me. He was right. I had been clinging to fragments of fear, to the idea that maybe this time Jake would change, that maybe fate could be negotiated. But fate did not bargain. It demanded choices. That night, I made mine. The following day, I returned to my family's house, not to plead or explain but to sever ties. My parents tried to intervene, insisting I maintain the engagement. My mother clutched pearls at her neck, furious, while my father's voice boomed about alliances and reputation. But I stood tall. "This is my life. If your concern is money and status, then keep them. I will not trade myself for either. The wedding is off. Tell Jake to mourn his sweetheart however he wants, but I am not his substitute, and I never will be again." My father's mouth tightened, but he saw something in my face that warned him I would not yield. He said nothing more. My mother stormed off, muttering about disgrace. I walked out without looking back. Jake cornered me days later in a hotel lobby, desperation leaking from every line of his face. "Sophie, listen. You are making a mistake. I can make it right this time. I can give you everything." "You already did." I cut him off. "You gave me misery. You gave me regret. You gave me a life where Amy's ghost stood between us every single day. That was enough. I do not need more." He flinched, anger flashing in his eyes. "You owe me." I stepped closer, voice like ice. "I owe Amy the truth. That is all. You? You are nothing to me now." For the first time, Jake had no reply. His jaw worked, his pride splintered, but no words came. I left him standing there, surrounded by the silence he had earned. Days blurred into weeks. I moved fully into the apartment my father had grudgingly offered, paying rent with what little I had saved. Ryan stopped by often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with tools, always with quiet strength. He never pressed, never demanded. He simply stayed when I needed him to. One evening, as the sun bled orange across the horizon, I found myself sitting on the steps outside the repair shop. Ryan was working late, sleeves rolled up, grease streaking his arm. I watched him, my heart unexpectedly light. When he noticed me, he smiled faintly. "You look better these days." "I feel better," I admitted. "For the first time in 2 lives, I feel free." He leaned on the doorway, arms crossed. Freedom is a heavy thing. What do you plan to do with it? The question settled deep in me. What would I do? I had been living reactively, always surviving, never truly living. But now, the horizon felt wide. I do not know yet, I said honestly. But whatever it is, it will be mine. No one else's. Ryan nodded. Good. Because if you keep walking like that, Sophie, someone like me might just decide to walk with you. Heat spread across my cheeks. I laughed softly, a sound I had not heard from myself in far too long. And what if I do not mind? For a moment, his gaze held mine, steady and unflinching. Then he returned to his work, leaving the answer unspoken but heavy with possibility. The next morning, I woke to sunlight spilling through clean windows. No chains, no expectations, no haunting shadows dictating who I should be. Just the sound of life outside, the bark of a dog, the buzz of a passing car, the hum of a world that had finally opened to me. I had chosen differently. I had broken the cycle. And though scars still traced my past, I knew one truth with absolute certainty. This life was mine. And I would never let anyone steal it again.